In order for you to claim the depreciation, there has to be one asset. There has to be one asset and there has to be some value. If both conditions are cumulatively satisfied, you can claim the depreciation. I'll repeat. For you to claim the depreciation, there has to be at least one asset in the block and the block should have some value. Then you can claim it. Like I have 100 chairs. All 99 chairs have been discarded because they are waste. There's only one chair, but 100 chairs ke liye I have spent 1 lakh rupees. All 99 discarded, only one is left. On that one asset or one chair also, I can claim 1 lakh depreciation. I mean, like on a yearly basis, like as per the rates. The logic is there has to be at least one asset in the block and the block has to have a little bit of amount. If nothing is, I mean, like if this condition is not satisfied, like the block is ceased to have a value or it ceased to have an asset in it, then it will be converted into short-term capital asset or short-term capital gain. So Mysore Minerals, this case study, you remember, registration is not compulsory. There is one tourism department. The assets are held by the government. The government is giving the buses to that corporation, the tourist corporation, and that corporation is using this asset for the visitors. So still the corporation can claim the depreciation of the buses because they are using the assets. They are having the risk and reward. Though the legal ownership with the government, but still corporation can claim the depreciation. And plant, what all will be included in the plant, you will be surprised to see that ships, vehicles, books, even books are also planned for you. Scientific apparatus and surgical equipments, all these are plants for you. And sanitary and pipeline fittings installed in a hotel, that is also your plant. Nursing home building with the operation with the facilities, even that is also a plant for you. And coming to excludes, what doesn't include the plant? Tea bushes, livestock, building, furniture and fixtures, they will not be planned. Reason, because we have separate block for furnitures and fixtures and buildings, and for livestock it's not a plant actually. Okay, it's just like a living thing. And Anand Theatre, the case study the case study is that there is a land, someone has come there and they are constructing a building like a theater on which they want to claim the depreciation. The court said yes, you can do it because you need not be owner of the land on which the building has been constructed or situated. You can be owner of the building, still you can claim it. Okay. And the depreciation rates, I will just walk you through the few rates. You need to by heart. I mean, there is no logic here. Building ke liye, if it is used for the employees quarters or for the residential purpose, 5%. If you are using for normal, it is 10%. If you are using it for water supply projects or water treatment systems, it will be 40%. Okay. So in furniture and fixtures, 10%. Just remember, tangible machinery and plant and machinery, it will be 15%. This is your general wala. If at all it is not falling under anything, you can go with this 15%. And motor cars, 15%. And so a few rates just need to by heart or just to remember, that's it. Computer 40%, these are important for you. Books also 40%, ships 20%, know-how 25%. Just you have to mug up this. I cannot explain any logic here, just have to go through once before going for an examination. So coming to written down value, this is important for you. Whenever there is a question relating to your depreciation, you have to solve in this way. This way, opening plus purchases minus closing will give you your minus sales will give you closing balance, so on which you will calculate the depreciation rates. This is a correct number wise, but in examination you will not get marks for that. You need to write in a proper language. You should not write opening balance, you should write WDV at the beginning of the year. And purchases, don't write purchases, you write cost of acquisition as per section 43(1). Okay. And sales, don't write sales here, you write monies payable in respect of sale, exchange, relinquishment, all those things will come, so that will be your sales. And don't write closing balance, you write WDV at the beginning of the year for the purpose of depreciation calculation, and then you do the depreciation calculation and the remaining will be WDV for the next year. Okay, so this is a format. This is a format you have to remember in examination. While presenting, aim for 4 marks for 5 marks. Okay, so if you just do with the numbers, you will get like 2 to 3 marks. But if you write a format properly with the what is given in the act or the book, you will be getting chance of getting more marks. Okay, 4 to 4.5 you can try. Okay, but if you just go with the opening plus and sales minus closing multiplied by rate, you will be getting very less marks, right? So I'll just read it out for you. Opening balance, then add, that is the cost of acquisitions, less monies payable in respect of asset of the block which is sold. Remaining will be WDV for the purpose of depreciation. You multiply with the rates, you will get the closing value of block. Okay, so that's how you can find out that 43.6 WDV. And coming to cost of asset, there are certain adjustment you need to make. Actual cost, like cost of asset means actual cost. What are the adjustments? Cost of purchase or construction of an asset, that will be deducted by amount of excise duty in respect of which a Senvati credit is allowed. It's like you are purchasing an asset on which you are claiming the ITC, GST, ITC. So when you are already claiming, that is not a cost for you. So the original cost, if I'm purchasing 1 lakh worth of an item and I'm paying some 18% GST, so it is becoming 1,18,000. So this 18,000 should not become a part of the cost. Okay, why? Because one side you are claiming the ITC, another side you are claiming the depreciation. By including it in your cost is like illogical. I mean, like you are taking double benefit benefit from the government. So that's the reason why they say whenever you have a credit, don't include that. And if it is directly paid by any government, like I'm purchasing 10 lakh worth of an asset, out of the 10 lakh, 2 lakh has been paid with the central government or state government or some governmental authority. So then the 2 lakh is not my cost, I have to deduct here. And we need to add certain things. What all we need to add? I'm taking a loan today. I'm purchasing an asset, but that asset to put it in a proper place, it requires 3 months. Okay, so I need to do some operations, I need to do some work in my plant to make that asset usable. Okay, so during the period for which the asset is getting ready for its intended use, just like our AS 10 or Ind AS 16, if you are following the final. So AS 10 fixed asset concept, like whatever you are incurring, whatever the interest that you are incurring till the asset is getting ready for its intended use. AS 16 borrowing cost also the same concept will come here, also the same concept. Before the asset is getting ready for its intended use, whatever the interest portion you are paying to the bank, that will be added to the cost. Once the asset is ready, and whatever the interest that you are paying to the bank, that will be going to your PGBP. 36(1), there is one section there you will be taking into PGBP. Okay, till the time asset is ready for its intended use, till the time, like this is Jan, this is June, this is next 31st March. This is your this is the time where the asset was getting ready. So this will go to 43.1 cost of asset. This interest here, the interest will go to 43.1. Here the interest will go to your PGBP 36.1. Okay, so that is your interest wala portion. And freight, insurance, loading, unloading, all this will be added. I'm purchasing an asset from Delhi, or it takes some time for me to get it. There involves some loading, unloading, freight, insurance, all this will be covered as a part of the asset, because that is using for the first time, right? Just like AS 10 ka concept. And then installation ka kuch hai to, like if I'm incurring any expenditure for installation, that will also be included here. And this 10,000 ka logic, there is an amendment. You have to really appreciate this amendment, or you have to understand this amendment. Whenever you are incurring any revenue expenditure, there used to be a section like, or is still there, 40A3, that will tell you if you are making a payment for an expenditure or for purchase, and you are making a payment in cash when the payment is exceeding 10,000, that will be disallowed. I'm taking audit services, I'm taking accounting services, I'm paying some expenditure or something expenditure I'm incurring. If the amount is more than 10,000, I'm making payment otherwise than by account pay check or demand draft and all those things, that will be disallowed. Okay, so now this used to be only for revenue. They brought it for capital expenditure also, which means if I'm purchasing a machinery from Maharashtra or Delhi, when I'm making the payment and the amount is more than 10,000, that will not be added to the cost, that will not be added to the WDV. Same way, if it's a revenue expenditure, that will not be allowed to be debited in P&L, that will be added back. Okay. This normal depreciation, additional depreciation I have explained. And additional depreciation के लिए we have a few more points I just want to tell you. It is 20% for normal, and if you are located in West Bengal, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh and Bihar, you will be getting 35%. For other locations, additional depreciation is 20%. For here it is 35%, and it has to be put to use, or the operation has been set up after 1st April 2015, right? And for claiming the additional depreciation, you should have not used your asset, or you should have not purchased any ships or aircrafts or anything that has already been used within India or outside India, and we are using an asset for office or residential or guest house. Okay, just for luxury purpose, why are you claiming depreciation? For giving normal depreciation itself is a bigger thing. You want to claim additional depreciation on what? Okay, so they will not be giving additional depreciation on anything that is not relating to your production directly. Okay, you are purchasing any road transport vehicles or appliances, office appliances like kind of printer you are purchasing. Why you want to claim depreciation on that? Additional depreciation, normal depreciation will be given. Some appliances they will not be giving it. Okay, or anything on which you are claiming the 100% deduction, like we will be coming to this 35 AD or scientific research expenditure. You will be getting 100% of benefit in the year in which you are purchasing only. If I am incurring 10 lakh rupees capital expenditure, all capital expenditure I will be debiting to my P&L in that year itself, right? So when I am already claiming 100% of my benefit, why should I be given the normal depreciation? Why should I be given the additional depreciation? Nothing will be given, because you have already claimed 100 out of 100, right? And 180 days to logic I told you, otherwise it is 50%. If it is held for more than 180 days, it will be 100%. Passive use also will come. And power sector ko I told you, they can claim SLM, individual asset basis. They have to give their option before filing the return of income. Once they exercise, that is final, and they cannot cancel it after that. And there is something called balancing charge and terminal depreciation. I'll tell you with one example. I bought an asset, I'm into power sector. I bought an asset for 10 lakh and it will run for 10 years. So I'm claiming depreciation on SLM basis. Okay, so first year I'll be deducting 1 lakh rupees as a depreciation. So it will become 9 lakhs. Again in the second year I'm claiming 1 lakh. So it is becoming 8 lakh. So there are three possibilities now. This is my carrying value, or you can say book value. So there are three possibilities. I can sell it for 7 lakh, I can sell it for 9 lakh, I can sell it for 11 lakh. So what is the treatment? If I am selling it for 7 lakhs, means the carrying value is 8 lakh, I am selling it for 7 lakhs, like full portion, 100% of the asset, I am selling it for 7 lakhs. So there is a difference of 1 lakh, right? So that is my loss. So instead of calling it a loss, I will say it's a terminal depreciation. I have an item of 8 lakhs, I am selling it for 7 lakhs. All the asset I am selling, it's not like a part of it, it's all the asset I am selling. So that 1 lakh difference, I will be calling it as terminal depreciation. Second thing, I have an asset of 8 lakh, I am selling it for 9 lakhs, so I am getting a gain. So don't call it a gain, because you already claimed twice, right? I mean, like I already claimed 2 lakh rupees in the previous years. One in the previous year, one is before that year. So out of the 2 lakh, I am getting 1 lakh benefit now, right? So that is called balancing charge. So what you are trying to say, that whatever I have debited to my P&L 2 lakhs, out of 2 lakh I am getting 1 lakh benefit now, so I will reverse it. So instead of calling it reverse, they will say credit your P&L and call it as a balancing charge. Okay, and the third one, I am selling it for 11 lakhs. So original cost for 10 lakhs, I am selling it for 11 lakh, right? So 11 minus 10, 1 lakh will be my capital gain. And whatever I have debited already 2 lakh, I mean like once in P&L 1 year 1 lakh, second again one more time 1 lakh. So 2 lakhs I have already debited into my P&L, the 2 lakh will be reversed. So that I will be calling it as a balancing charge. Unabsorbed depreciation, you can claim whatever the depreciation that you're not able to debit your P&L because you're not having sufficient income. Don't say it's a business loss. You'll say you say unabsorbed depreciation. So unabsorbed depreciation, the depreciation is a compulsory thing, but it's not an expenditure. It's just an allowances. I mean, kind of a benefit given to you. So because of depreciation, you should not have a business loss. If your business business income is not sufficient, you call it as a unabsorbed depreciation. You can claim this for n number of years. Like, you can keep carrying forward to the next year like that. Whenever you get a profit, you can set it off. You can set it off with any other income but except salary. Okay. Continuity of business is not a precondition. So like after 4 or 5 years you discontinued your business, but you still have that unabsorbed depreciation, still that can be carried forward and set up with some other income. Continuity of business is not required. Okay, you are exiting from this business and you are getting into some other business, but still you can claim this depreciation. Okay, so return of income you need not file on time. For any other loss to be carried forward, you need to file return of income on time, but for unabsorbed depreciation there is no such compulsion. Yeah, so this point also I've explained. Computation of capital gain on depreciable assets. The point here is, in order for you to claim the depreciation, you need to have at least one asset in the block, and the block should have a value. So when the one other condition is not satisfied, I mean, like either it is not having a value or it is not having a at least one asset, that will be called as a short-term capital asset or short-term capital gain or short-term capital loss. Yeah, so now whatever we have done is we have just covered section 28 only. This is a charging section, and section 32 depreciation. Okay, so now from here our section will be going bit fast. Section 30, rent, rates, repairs and insurance for building. If you are having a building, on that building you are paying rent to the owner, you can claim it under section 30. Rates and taxes to the local government you are paying, you can claim that. You are incurring some repair, you can claim that. You are taking insurance, you can take that. For building anything you can take under section 30, but that should not be a capital expenditure, that should not be your personal expenditure. That's it. Okay, coming to plant and machinery and furniture, you can claim repairs and insurance. So these two you can claim on your machinery, plant and machinery and furniture under section 31. What all you cannot claim? You cannot claim rent, you cannot claim taxes. You might ask, sir, why it is not allowed? Because at that time they not thought that somebody will take it on a rent. So now you can claim it under 37(1). Okay, so for building everything you can claim under section 30. Under 31, plant and machinery and for furniture you can claim only repairs and insurance. Remaining two, like rents and taxes, you can claim under 37, general section, right? And section coming to section 35 AD, it is not in existence now because the period has been ended. We'll just go through once. The investment has to be made between 1st April 2015 to 31st March 2020, and 15% will be allowed. This is in addition to the other allowances it is given to you, but this will not go down to you from your WDV. Okay, so just ignore this section because it's outdated now. I mean, like, it's not relevant, but I just read it because it's there in the PDF. That's it. Okay, you can ignore this fact. And scientific research, there used to be a lot of hangama earlier, like 125%, 150%, 175%, 200%. With the God's grace, that has been done away. There is no other percentages. Everything that you incur, be it capital expenditure, be it revenue expenditure, will be allowed to be debited into your P&L. What is that? Except land, you can claim it. Okay. See, for all other businesses, revenue expenditure anyway is allowed to be debited. Fine. For this, capital expenditure also allowed to be debited except land, just to promote them, just to encourage them to do more research, encourage a lot of companies to come and do this kind of a business, or to involve in the scientific research. They are doing it, so they can do it all in case of in-house research. In-house research matlab they are doing internally. Like, there's a Bharat Biotech, now they want to come up with a COVID vaccine, so they are doing internally. They're not giving money to anyone else to, you can do it, I am giving you money, I will support you. Not like that. They have their own internal things, they are doing it. Okay, so now here one point you have to understand: except land, everything else will be debited, to be allowed to be debited. But here point is, sometimes what happens is, if it is an existing business, you can claim it. But if it is a new business, sometimes, see, it's not 2021, I want to come up with a new product in next 5 years. So I'm keep working. My employees, I mean like my scientists are working, I have a plant, there also I'm working. But by the time the product comes out, it takes a lot of time, right? So can I claim all this expenditure which I have incurred before the actual production has started, before the actual output has gonna become successful? The answer is yes, but only up to 3 years go back. You can go back to 3 years. You can claim on the salary to whatever you're paying to your employees, and the purchase of material, like what are the acids and all that chemicals you use, that you can claim it. And capital expenditure also you can claim it, but except land. Okay, just land ko chhod ke everything else will be allowed to be debited. Okay, but you need to capitalize in the books of accounts. So 100% will be allowed. And if you are into biotechnology or manufacturing of any article or thing, then this section is there. Here also you can claim capital expenditure also, but only thing is that you should not be producing anything. This is given under 11th schedule. So what is that 11th schedule? It has a list of articles which are not so important for us. It's not like we will die without that product. It's like a toothpaste or some chocolates or some fancy item, not required. So I will promote you, but not that you will do your research in bringing out a new flavor of chocolate. You can do that for some other purpose which will be beneficial for everyone, which is like a necessity. Okay, so except given under 11th schedule, you can claim it. So all it's 100%. Don't get into the zone of 125%, 150%. Forget about that. And whatever the unabsorbed capital expenditure that you have, because you are a scientific research, you wanted to debit your P&L with 100 crores, like you are purchasing a new plant, which is like kind of you constructed a new plant and it's kind of 100 crores, but your revenue is like only 20 crores. You wanted to debit there, but there is nothing to be debited, right? So that is called unabsorbed capital expenditure, that will be treated as if it is a unabsorbed depreciation and it will be carried forward. So 135 CCC 100%, if you're giving it to rural development program, there is also nothing, I mean like I don't think there's a question on that. And specified business, you can expect a question here. Section 35 ED, you can expect a question there. So what is that specified business? As in the case of scientific research, here also you can debit your revenue. It's same for everybody. Revenue everybody can debit. Capital expenditure, scientific research, they can claim except land. But for specified business, it is except land, goodwill and financial instrument. So financial instrument is FR chapter for final level. But for now, land, goodwill and financial instrument, that you cannot debit. Other than that you can debit, but the thing is that you need to capitalize in your books of accounts. And what are the specified business? I'll just read it out because it's a revision video. It's a cold chain facility, agricultural produce, I mean like a warehouse for agricultural produce, in a hospital with 100 beds for patients, or any housing project given by the CBDT, or producing fertilizers in India, laying and operating cross-country natural gas, crude oil, petroleum, and 2-star or more or above hotel, and slum redevelopment program or rehabilitation program given by central government, and freight stations notified by the CBDT, kind of inland container depot or a container freight stations. It's like for import and export, you are constructing some container depots. And beekeeping and production of honeybee and bee wax, setting up and operating a warehouse facilities for storage of sugar. So these are all your specified businesses. You need not mug it up, just read it once, that's it. Slurry pipeline for transportation of iron ore from one place to another place. They just putting some pipeline so that you can take the metal from one location to another location. Semiconductor wafer fabrication, I'm just reading and there's no explanation here. And for what do you mean by infrastructure facility? It's kind of a road, bridge and railway systems. And irrigation projects, sanitation projects, sewerage projects, solid waste management projects, port, airport, inland waterways, inland port, navigational channels in the sea. So all this will be your specified business, and 100% will be allowed as we discussed. But make sure that it is not by breaking an existing business and doing it. Okay, it shouldn't be as a matter of fact of splitting of an existing business and forming a new business just to get into this 35AD. Like there is one hospital, there is one other hospital, there's a small clinic, so they are like having some 20 beds, 30 beds, 40 beds. So they are all coming together and forming a new business just to say we are specified business, we want to claim all capital expenditure. That is like a, what are you doing? It's not a new business, right? It's like already existing business you are breaking, and all people coming together just to say we are having more than 100 patient beds. That is like not a intention of the law. It has to be a new business, but up to 20% it is allowed. Okay, so 20% of the assets can be, you can use it. And whatever the assets that you are saying, that should be used for a period of 8 years. If I'm started if I'm debiting my P&L now, from here I should be using it for 8 years. In between, if I break the chain, whatever the capital gain I have escaped, okay, that will be like whatever the cost that I said, that will be treated as a PGBP income. But the only point is, had it not been a specified business, at least I would have got that 32 ka normal depreciation, right? Just asking as a begging kind of thing. Like there is 100 rupees asset, I have debited my P&L. After 3-4 years I wanted to sell it, 2 years I wanted to sell. So I'm saying, had it not been a specified business, at least I would have got some 10 rupees, assuming it's a normal building, 10 rupees for 1 year, 10 rupees for second year. So I would be paying tax on only 80 but not on 100. So that is a reasonable logic. The logic is, at least you allow 32 ka depreciation ka benefit when you are selling it before 8 years. But this section will not apply if the asset is destroyed. I mean, like you wanted to use it for 8 years, but before that only it got destroyed. What can I do for that? Okay, it will not be applicable there. Or you are declared as a sick company. Okay, there is one act under which you are declared as a sick company, like you are not able to do it, and then it is a compulsory for you to survive. In order to survive, you are selling your asset. It's fine. Okay, so that's all your 35, and we will go to 36. Here it will be other deductions. Other deductions bole to, like they will be giving certain deductions that will be allowed. I'll read it quickly. Insurance premium paid for your stock, that will be allowed, and insurance premium paid by the Milko cooperative societies for their animals and all, that will be allowed. Premium paid for the employees of the health, for the health insurance of the employees. Premium paid by the employer for the health insurance of the employees. I'm sorry. So I have an organization, I am the employer, I have few employees. On their life I want to take any health insurance, it's allowed. Okay, bonus and commission I'm paying, it's allowed, subjected to 43B. So which means that I need to make the payment before the date of filing the return of income. That's fine. Interest on borrowed capital, this is allowed. Just now I said, once the asset is ready for its intended use, then after that period, whatever the interest that you are paying to the bank for that period, that can be claimed under this 36(1)(3). You're getting? But before the asset is ready for its intended use, whatever the interest that you are paying, that will go to your 42(1) cost of asset. And zero coupon bonds, like I'm issuing a bond at 70 rupees. After 10 years, I will be reading it at 100 rupees. So there is no interest for you. It's only that deep discount, 70 minus 100, 100 minus 70, 30, that I will be claiming under my PGBP. That is allowed. And contribution to provident fund, that is also allowed. Contribution or pension fund, if I am using anything, that is also allowed. But make sure that it is not more than 10% of your salary. Calculate properly what you mean by salary, basic plus DA, if it is forming part of your retirement benefits. Only to that extent I can contribute. If I am contributing more than that, that will be disallowed. Okay, so there is one illustration, just you can go through once, we don't have time for that. And allowances for animals, like for a manufacturer or for a trader, he has a cost of asset, cost of acquisition and sale. But for an industries who are depending upon these animals, they cannot sell, right? They continue to use those animals. So whenever they are dead and they are selling it to as a carcass, then the remaining amount you can claim it as a PGBP expenditure. And bad debts also allowed. Only bad debt is allowed. Provision for bad debt is not allowed. If it is like I want to claim provision on my debtors, not allowed. there is one person who is not paying, I know he will not pay, I can debit my P&L account saying it's a bad debt, I can claim it. Okay, so ICDS also will come into picture. And what it says is, sometimes you are, when you recognize revenue even before you are writing in your books of accounts because of ICDS, when it is certainty, when the certainty is there, then even though you are not writing it off as a bad debts, you can still claim it. Okay, so other than ICDS, normally provision is not allowed, actual is allowed. For ICDS, like for the companies who are using ICDS, who have to use ICDS, and because they are recognizing even before the books of accounts, they cannot write it off, right? So if for them also they can claim it, I mean they can claim bad debts. And subsequently, if you recover bad debts, that will be taxable under 41(4). Family planning, it's only for the companies. Like as an employer is incurring some expenditure for the family planning of the employees, that is allowed, but it's only for the employees. So only for the companies. STT, security transaction tax, if you're paying on your stock, I mean like if you are into the business of like buying and selling of sheets, STT you are paying, that you can claim here, or you can claim commodity transaction tax also, CTT. And section 37 is a residual expenses. So what this section says is, whatever the expenditure that you are incurring for your business, which is not in a personal nature, which is not a capital expenditure, which is not against any law, and which you could not cover under any other section, like from 30 to 36, you can claim it here. So put it simply, if there is any benefit which is clearly given under section 30 to 36, don't claim it here. If you are incurring for your personal expenditure, don't claim it here. If you are incurring it for infringement of law, don't claim it here. Okay, if it is used for your personal use, don't claim it here. Okay, so if it should be in the course of your business. It's for in the ordinary course of your business, you can claim there. CSR not allowed. Advertisement, CSR not allowed because it is your responsibility, 135 as per the Companies Act. And advertisement in so near of political parties, not allowed, because you're not there to do the advertisement for the political parties, right? You can claim under 80GG if that is allowed for you. And coming to this 40 inadmissible deductions. What do you mean by inadmissible deduction? 30 to 37 they are saying this can be allowed. From 40 they'll only say what is not allowed. What is not allowed means you are doing something which is not proper. It's not that they are restricting you to incur an expenditure. They are only telling you that you are not doing as per my intention. So I'll tell you a few things. 40A. So if I am an employer or if I am a company, I am making a payment to a non-resident, I am not deducting TDS, or I am deducting TDS but I am not paying it to the government, because he is a non-resident. 100% will be disallowed. Okay, I am incurring 100 rupees out of 100 will be disallowed. And the same expenditure I am incurring it on my residents, 40A1A. If I am incurring an expenditure, I have to pay to a resident like who is residing in Hyderabad. I am paying 100 rupees. I have not deducted TDS, or I have deducted TDS but not paid in time before filing the return of income, then 30% will be disallowed because he is a resident. Okay, 40A 1 is for non-resident, 40A1A is for resident. There 100% is disallowed, here 30% is disallowed. Okay, and one more question. You will have a point of 194J. 194J says that whenever you are making any professional charges, fees for technical services and all those things, you have to professional services, you have to deduct TDS under section 194J at the rate of 10%. Now it is slashed by 25%. That's a different issue, but the monetary limit is 30,000. Only when you are making a payment beyond 30,000, that will be that will come under the purview of TDS under section 194G. But for directors, there is no such a limit. Even from 100 rupees also, if you are paying 100 rupees to the director, you have to deduct the TDS. Okay, for others, for any chartered accountant or any other company secretary or any other professional, they are making a payment, there is a threshold limit of 30, but not for the directors. And 48(2), it's like you are calculating the PGBP income only to pay tax. Okay, so whatever the tax you already paid, you cannot debit there, which means your income tax is not allowed to be debited in your P&L. Okay, here also 48(3) is making a salary payment to outside India and is not deducting TDS, or is deducting TDS but not paid in time. then that is also disallowed. Okay, provident fund, provident fund is did not deducting TDS. Here also it is not allowed to be debited. I mean, this is disallowed. And employees tax on employees perquisite. What do you mean by this? I'm giving some non-monetary benefits to my employee, so tax on that non-monetary perquisite should be paid by the employee only. It's his business, but out of compassion I am only paying. Okay, so when I am paying, it is disallowed for me, and the same is exempt for him. Okay. 40B, this provision makes it very clear that firm, when they are paying remuneration or salary or whatever you call it to the partners, they can pay it, but that should be he should be a working partner, and there should be a partnership deed, and you have to pay the amount only after you enter the partnership deed. It cannot be for it cannot be like your retrospective change. Okay. And if you are paying interest, it should not exceed 12% of the salary, 12% of the capital amount. Which is simple interest. And if it is a remuneration, up to 3 lakh, 1.5 lakh or 90% of the book profit. The remaining amount, it is 60% of the book profits. And for associations, AOB, BOI, for them it's not there is no partnership deed, so whatever they are paying, that is will be disallowed. And if you are receiving interest, or if you are paying interest to the AOP or BOI, otherwise as a member, then that will not be coming under these provisions. Means there won't be any disallowances. And for 40A is again this is also not kind of disallowed, but don't say the word disallowed. It's like non deductible in certain cases. Payments to related parties, 48.2. So I'm paying some expenditure to my wife or my children or to my sister or brother. That expenditure is exceeding the fair market value. Normally for some accounting work I should be charging 1 lakh rupees, but I am paying 10 lakh rupees to my brother, so 9 lakh rupees is extra I am charging only because he is a related to me. So whenever you are making any transaction to a related party and it appears to the assessing officer that the amount that you paid is more than for your genuine purpose, more than the fair market value, the extra amount he has the authority to add it back, I mean like to make it as a disallowance. And so that is your 40A2, and 40A3 is a cash payment. It's not there here, but whenever you are making a cash payment of more than 10,000 rupees, that will be disallowed. So compulsory maintenance of books of accounts. Who all needs to maintain the books of accounts? 44A will tell you, if you are into any profession like cameraman, director, music director, art director, editor, singer, lyricist, story writer, screenplay writer, dialogue writer, and dress designer, then in all the 3 previous years your gross receipts should exceed 1.5 lakh, or if you are starting it now, it is likely to exceed 1.5 lakh, then you need to maintain the books of accounts. 1.5 lakh in all the 3 years, or if you are starting with the first time, it is likely to exceed 1.5 lakh only for this specified professionals. Okay. And what all they need to prepare? Cash book, journals, ledgers. If there is any bill, if it is exceeding 25 rupees, and if you are making any payment, it should be exceeding 50 rupees. There has to be some document on that. And if you are into medical profession, daily case register, like which patient has come, what treatment you have done, and all those things. They on a daily basis they'll maintain a case register, so that has to be given. And inventory of the stock of drugs, medicine, everything you need to maintain. And if you are other than the professions which I said it just now, it is 2.5 lakh. Otherwise it is 1.5 lakh for them. Yeah, 1.5 lakh only, no? Yeah, 1.5 lakh there. Now it is 2.5 lakh if it is your income, or if it is your gross receipts, it is 25 lakh. The logic goes the same way. In the last 3 years, in all the last 3 years, it should have exceeded gross receipts 25 lakhs, or income exceeded or 2.5 lakh. Or if it is a new business, gross receipts are likely to exceed 2.5 lakh, or the income is likely to exceed gross receipts are likely to exceed 25 lakh, income is likely to be exceeding 2.5 lakh. If it is other than individual and HUF, it is 1.2 lakh and 10 lakhs. So just see the difference. For individual they have given a bit more relaxation, up to 2.5 lakh income we need not maintain the books of accounts, but for others it is 1.5 lakh, and for us the turnover is 25 lakh, for them it is 10 lakh. Okay, so that way you can remember. And coming to this 44 AE, you have to understand what is this 44 AE. For the people who are into the hiring, leasing and plying of road transport vehicle, and who are owning not more than 10 vehicles, they have a present taxation under section 44 AE. They will tell at what rate and how they should be paying tax. But if the person wants to pay tax lesser than that amount, then he has to maintain the books of accounts. Okay, I'm not asking you to maintain the books of accounts. I know you cannot maintain it, it's difficult for you to maintain, but if you want to pay tax lesser than the specified rates, you need to maintain the books of accounts under section 44 AE, and you need to get them audited under section 44 AB. Okay, and this 44 AD is also kind of the same thing. If I'm going to a present to taxation now, I should be there in the present to taxation for the next 5 years. But in that next 5 years, if I want to come out of the present to taxation, then I'm not eligible to go back to the present to taxation for the next 5 years. Okay, it's like one, if I opt for the present taxation now, for the next 5 years I should be in the present taxation only. But in between, on the third year, if I break it from here to 8th year, like 5 years, I cannot come back to the present taxation. Okay, but during this period, if my income is exceeding basic exemption limit, I need to maintain the books of accounts under section 44 AA and get them audited under section 44 AB. You getting? Once I opt for present taxation, it's fine. I have to be there for 5 years. If I come out, then I cannot go back. If I come out and my income is more than basic exemption limit, then I have to maintain the books of accounts. Okay, this point I have explained, so don't worry. And for a profession it is 50 lakh. And for a profession who wants to ADA, there is one section like who has to pay tax on a present basis, like 50% of the receipts will be like my total income. But if I want to pay lesser than that, I have to go to 44 AA and maintain the books of accounts, 44 AB, get them audited. And I need to find the return of income 1 month before the filing the return of income. I mean, like this audit report I need to submit 1 month prior to the due date. Okay, so the due date is 31st October now, so 1 month before Balta it will be 30th September. So for AD it's for the business, and if you are like receiving in cash any payment, it will be 8% of total turnover or gross receipts. But if you are receiving everything in a non-banking or non-cash transaction, you can go with 6%. Okay, so in 44 ADA is for the profession, they will be paying tax at 50% of the gross receipts of such profession. 50% of the receipts they can pay under 44 ADA. 44 A is for the people who are hiring, leasing and plying of road transport vehicle. If it is a heavy vehicle, 1000 per ton for gross weight vehicle. It's on the basis of the weight if it is heavy vehicle. Okay, but if it is a light vehicle, 7500 per month or part of the month for every month for which I am owning the vehicle. Need not I use it, I am purchasing now, so from here I will start it. Okay, so calculate the number of months for which the asset is owned by the owner and the number of vehicles, like it is like 6 or 7, it should not exceed 10. Then I can go with this 7500 per month or part of the month multiplied by the number of months for which I am holding. In case if the vehicle is a heavy vehicle, 1000 per month on the gross vehicle weight. For 44 AD business, 44 ADA profession, they are not allowed to claim any benefit under section 30 to 36. They cannot have a depreciation, they cannot have any other thing, even normal depreciation, normal thing also they cannot claim. But 44 AE for road transport vehicle wala, they can claim salary remuneration to their partners, but subject to 40B. Okay, coming to this agricultural and non-agricultural concept, if you are into the business of sale of rubber products, 35% will be business income, 65 will be exempt. Like if you are receiving 100 rupees, only 35 you need to pay, remaining you can ignore. It's a business it's a agricultural income. But if it is a sale of coffee, 25%, grown, cured, and like you are doing more stuff, then 40% will be your business income, remaining will be agricultural income. If it is only tea, 40% will be business income, 60% will be agricultural income. You need to by heart this, there is no logic on this. Section 28 is a charging section, like how we talk in salary. 15 is a charging section, which will tell us why we need to pay tax under the head income from salary. The same way 22 will talk about the charging section from house property. There we will be coming to know why we need to pay tax under house property. In the same way, section 28 will tell us why an assessee has to pay tax under PGBP. Okay, so this section is really elaborative, so we need not by heart the entire top points there, but have collected few points which are relevant for examination or which are like kind of amendments in the recent past. So let's start. The profits and gains of any business or profession which was carried on by the assessee at any time during the previous year. Like an assessee who is doing any business, it could be your profession, it could be your business, and whatever the gains that you are getting from that profession or business, that has to come under PGBP. Any compensation or any payment for any person by whatever name called it or in connection with the termination or modification of the terms or the conditions of any contract relating to his business. Okay, it's like I'm into a business, I have entered into a contract with a person for supply of goods or some related services, and in between he's contracting, he's cancelling his contract. Because of cancellation of contract or because of modification of a contract, he's giving me something as a liquidated damages, so that will be my PGBP income. I'll repeat, I'm into a profession or I'm into a business, I'm entering into a contract with a party, a vendor, to supply certain goods or to supply certain services. In between the duration of the contract is terminating the contract, is stopping the contract, or is modifying the contract. Because of that, I'm asking some compensation because he is not abiding by the terms of the contract. So whatever I'm receiving from him, that will be treated as a business income. And sometimes whenever I'm into the business of exports, I will be exporting certain goods from India. So in order to encourage me to export more, Government of India will be giving me certain benefits like duty drawback, some credits, okay, or some passbook, something like that they will be giving me. So whatever the benefits that I'm getting from the Government of India through customs, that will be my PGBP income. The value of any benefit or perquisite, whether convertible into money or not, arising from business or exercise of a profession. I'm into a profession of accountancy now. I advise my clients to purchase Tally software. Okay, so I'm promoting Tally indirectly. So I am able to make certain sales, or I'm able to convince a few people to purchase Tally software because of my effort. Tally company that is giving me some benefits. It could be monetary, it could be in the form of cash, or it could be in the form of non-monetary. Something like they are giving me movie tickets, they are giving me Amazon voucher, they are giving me flight tickets to travel to some place. Okay, so be it convertible into money or cash, or not convertible into cash, or it is in the cash form itself, whatever I'm receiving from, or whatever I'm receiving due to exercise of my business or in the process of my business or a profession, that will be treated as my PGBP income. Any interest, salary, bonus, commission or remuneration by whatever name called due to or received by a partner from his firm. Okay, so now if I'm starting my own business, I will be saying it's my PGBP income, right? In the same way, myself along with me, there are few people like my friends, we are coming together to start a business like a partnership firm. So even though it's a partnership firm, still I would say it is my business. Okay, I would not say that I am being employed by a firm. Even though there are other partners, co-partners or co-founders, I would still say that I am into the business. I would not say I am into the employment, right? So there is nothing like employer-employee relationship. So whatever I am receiving from my firm, be it salary, be it remuneration, be whatever you call it, that will be PGBP income only. Okay, so at this junction it is important to understand this section. 40B will give us certain restrictions, like when the firm is giving some salary or some remuneration to the partners, it should not exceed certain limits, like up to 3 lakh, 90% or beyond that 60%. We have some limits under 50 or 40B, right? In the same way, whenever the firm is giving interest to the partners, it should not exceed 12% of the simple interest, something like that. Okay, so whatever was allowed to PGBP in the form of no, in the hands of the firm, I will be paying tax on that. And no, if it is disallowed to them, it's like they already paid the tax, so I will not be paying tax on that income. Okay, so that is what they are saying here. Any sum, whether received or receivable in cash or kind under an agreement for not carrying out any activity in relation to any business or profession, or not sharing any know-how, patent, copyright, trademark, license, franchisee, or any other business or commercial right of a similar nature or information or technique likely to assist in the manufacturing or processing of goods or provision of services. Okay, so there's an amendment, like they have added services here. So what is that? I'm entering into a contract to not carry my profession, or not carry my business, or not to share my knowledge. I have a patent, I have a copyright, I have a trademark, or anything that is assisting me in production or supply or in a service. I am entering into a contract with a person of not sharing it, or not entering into a business. So it's like not to carry on the business. Okay, so whatever I am receiving here, that will be my PGBP income, because it is in relation to my business, right? And so whenever I'm entering into a contract with a person not to start my business, that contract need not be in writing, it can be oral also. It need not have a intention of going to the court. I mean, it need not have a no, the kind of like the all the things that are required for you to go to the court. Okay, not enforceable by law also, it's still fine. Not in the written form also, it is still fine. Any sum received under a Keyman insurance policy, including sum allocated by way of bonus on such policy. There is an employee who is very important to my organization, so I'm taking a policy on him. Like if something happens to him, I will be getting some amount. Okay, so whatever I'm receiving in the form of a policy amount or a bonus or whatever from the insurance company, because I've paid a insurance policy on my employee, that will be my PGBP income. If the amount is going to the employee, it will be taxable to him under salary. But if the same amount is going to the legal aids of that person after his death, something like that, then that will be income from other sources. Right, so there are certain case studies. We need not remember the case studies at our level. I mean, like we don't expect you to remember all the case studies that are there in the direct tax, but at least to understand the crux of that, I will tell you. This person, George Thomas, so what is he doing is practicing against atheism. It's like people who are not believing in God, so he's practicing, like he's spreading his religion. So in order to do that, his friends are supporting him, his friends are giving him some donations. So even that donation is also his business income, because it's like his professional income, because spreading his religion is his profession, and in that process he is receiving some amount from his friends through donations. That will be business income. Okay, and this is Sri Lakshmi Mills. This case study says that now I have a manufacturing unit in one location in Hyderabad. Because of COVID, I'm not able to produce goods. There is no demand for my product, so I'm suspending my business for a short period. It's like a temporary suspension. So during this period, someone asked me like, sir, can you give me this location on a rental basis for next 3 months or next 6 months? I'll be doing something, because for my product there is no COVID impact. I mean, he's into such an industry where he's not getting impacted by the COVID, kind of maybe food industry, or maybe pharma industry or something like that. Okay, so I am giving my location to him on a rental basis, and that is also because I am suspending my business, which is short term. Okay, this is a temporary suspension. So whatever I am receiving from him in the form of rent, that will be taxed under PGBP income. But if the suspension is for a permanent nature, like I don't want to revise my business, I don't want to start it over again, I'm closing all my business now, so I have decided it, so now I am giving it on a rental basis, that will go to my either income from house property or other sources depending upon what I am giving on a rental basis. But for time being, when I am suspending it on a temporary basis, on a short term basis, that will be taxed under PGBP. Okay. So if government is giving you anything in the form of a grant or something like that, that will be like kind of a refund of sales tax or subsidy on electricity charges. Like I'm incurring 10,000 rupees as an electricity bill, so but the government of Telangana wants to give me some subsidy, like they are giving me 2,000 rupees out of 10,000 rupees, so I can say that is also my PGBP income. And here Sardar Sindha, no, here the case study is that I have entered into an agreement with a foreign player. I am the author. I keep writing certain things for them. After some 23 years, they have cancelled the contract, because that is a huge loss for me, because that is the only contract for me. I mean depending upon the authorship of that non-resident. Because they are cancelling my contract, they are giving me some huge money. So that is not in the form of business, because it is not a day-to-day transaction, or it doesn't happen regularly. So it's a capital receipt. Okay, so there are a few more things I would like to throw light on. Coming to interest income, will that interest be going into PGBP or income from other source is a question. There could be a question on this. I'll read. Interest from advances from surplus funds where such advances are made with the intention to carry on the business of money lending are taxable, and the income therefrom would be taxable under the head PGBP. Okay, so what they are saying is I'm in the process of lending the money as an advance. So whenever I'm receiving interest, that will be my PGBP income. And interest on fixed deposit made as a margin money or collateral security for a loan for the purpose of business. Okay, so now I need some 10 lakh rupees money, so I am giving some collateral security to bank. So whatever they are receiving on that collateral security, that will be my PGBP income. Interest income on awards of arbitration is trading receipt and hence taxable as a business income. So it is like there is a dispute between two parties, and they went to the court, and court initially ordered that one of the parties need to submit some 1 lakh rupees to the court. Okay, so whatever the interest earned on that arbitration, so it's not like a court, but it's a process, legal process. So whatever the interest you are earning on that 1 lakh, that will be going to your PGBP, because you are, see, the nature of the contract itself is a business nature. Because of that business nature contract only, there is a dispute, and because of the dispute only, you have deposited the money, and because of you deposited the money, you have received some interest. So all that should go to PGBP only. And coming to income from other source, like what are the interests that will go to income from other source? Interest on FD and other deposits before commencement of the business, even before you are starting your business. Like now I just cleared my exam, CA final, and I raised some 20 lakh rupees from my father, friends, everybody. I have a startup idea. Okay, but the idea will work from some 1st of July. So I'm waiting for next to 3-4 months. Like I want to keep that money idle. So instead of keeping that idle, I'm keeping in a bank. So whatever they are giving, the bank is giving it to me as an interest on my fixed deposit or some amount. That will not go to my PGBP, because I have not yet started my business. It is just before the commencement of the business, right? So it should go to income from other source. And surplus money not required for business and deposited in bank with persons as idle money for safekeeping. So I have received a lot of money from my clients and my students. I have a lot of money, so instead of keeping in my drawer, in my locker, I want to keep it in a bank. So the amount that I'm getting it from the bank will not be my PGBP, because that is an additional amount or ideal amount. No, instead of investing in another project or in another assignment, I'm like, instead of keeping it here, I want to keep it in a bank. So that will be my other source. It is not my business income. No, earning interest from bank is not my business income. Okay, so these are all not important things I'm telling you. So method of accounting, coming to this method of accounting for PGBP and income from other source. So the option is given to the assessee itself. Like you decide, do you want to go with the cash basis, or you want to go with the accrual basis. Is up to you. Okay, so it's up to them, but they have given certain income which will be taxable as what they have said in the section, what they have said in the income tax. Meaning for certain types of income I have a liberty to select whether to cash, whether on a accrual basis. But when the act is very specifically saying you don't have any liberty, you have to follow that. So they are something like that. Interest received on any compensation or enhanced compensation. So you have a land, government compulsorily acquired, that's a transfer in your hands as per capital gain chapter. So they will be giving you some amount, that will be your consideration, but you're not happy with that amount, you are going to the high court or you are going to some other authority. So the authority is telling them to pay additional amount to you, so that is your enhanced compensation. So when the court is deciding to pay you enhanced compensation, but the government will not pay immediately, they'll take some time. Okay, so when they take some time, we don't know, we cannot trust the government when they will come up with the money. So by the time they make the payment, there will be like 1 or 2 years of gap. On that, whatever the interest that you are receiving, it is taxable under income from other source, but it will be taxable only in the year in which you are receiving. Why only in the year in which you are receiving? See, somebody acquired my land or my building, I'm in pain. Okay, so you want me to pay tax on something which I not received is like brutal, right? For that reason, only when I receive from the government I will pay tax. Okay, this is on a receipt basis. And claim for escalation of price in a contract or export incentive. So like I'm entering into a contract to a person, and we are agreed to agree to this amount, like 1 lakh rupees for this kind of a service or kind of a some good. But later I'm like, I want to increase that price, escalation. Okay, I want to increase the price, but I cannot do it on my own because the contract has already been entered. So I need to take the approval of the other party also, right? So just because I decided to increase the price by some 10,000, I cannot say this is my taxable income. It has to be accepted by the other person. Okay, so when there is a reasonably certainty of realization, then you can say, you can take that escalation price or export incentives also. Export incentives also government gives, but that is also not guaranteed. Unless it is very certain that the government will pay you some export incentive, you should not take it into your P&L. Okay, and the duty drawback also, it kind of the same logic applies there. And coming to section 32, this is the main section. You can expect questions here only. Under section 32, you can expect like at least 5 marks there. You'll have normal depreciation, you have additional depreciation. In normal depreciation, they will be giving the rates, and additional depreciation available only for certain kind of assets only. They have some specifically, you should not be like second hand, it should not be using for some in your guest house, or it should not be your vehicle, something like they will be giving it. Okay, so for normal depreciation there is no such condition, you can claim on anything, and if you are holding it for less than 180 days, it's only half, otherwise it is full. And the other condition is you should be the owner. Okay, so I'll just read it. Whenever there is a explanation, I'll be giving separately. And one more thing, when you are claiming depreciation, it should be on the WDV basis, on a block of assets basis. Okay, so we have this section 211, that says about the block of assets, which means that whenever you have a lot of assets, you need to make it as a block. So you have to make a block in such a way that each block is consisting of a similar nature of item and they have a similar rate. So I have like 4 or 5 cars. Few cars I will be using it for my own self, like one car I use it for my profession, the remaining cars I will be giving it on a rental basis for a plying or hiring or something like that. Okay, so I can, because both are cars only, both are maybe same model, but both are used for different purposes. One is used for self, I have a different depreciation rate. When I'm using it for others, you have a different depreciation rate. In the same way, I have 2 buildings. One building I'm using it for myself, another building I'm using it for my business, 3 buildings. Another building I'm using it to hire it out to a hospital, okay, or for a hotel. So I'm running a hotel in one of the buildings. So I cannot say all 3 will belong to one block, because each block is the same nature, but they are having different rates. So in order for you to frame a block, the block has to have a same nature and it has to have a same depreciation rate. Okay, yeah. So which method we will be following for depreciation? For depreciation, we have normal depreciation, additional depreciation. In normal depreciation also you have WDV, that is also block of assets basis. But for few companies, power sector companies, they have given option, you can go with the SLM, original cost basis, on a individual item basis, like single asset basis. Okay, if you want to block everything, you frame it a block, you name it a block, you charge it as per the rates given under the rules. But if you don't want that, if you are a power generating SSC, then you have an option either to go with the WDV or you to go with the SLM. You have an option, but that option has to be exercised before you file the return of income for the first year. If you decided to go with the SLM, you have to stick with the SLM. You cannot come back to WDV. If you decided to go with the WDV, you have to stick with the WDV. You cannot come to the SLM. So I'll read few points which will be useful for us. Building, machinery, plant, furniture being tangible. So all tangibles are in one segment. Know-how, patent, copyright, trademark, license, franchises or any other business or commercial rights of similar nature being intangible. So intangible ke liye he has put a different segment, but not that all intangible will come there. I mean all tangibles will come there. In tangibles also you again have to see what is furniture, what is plant and machinery, what is building. Okay, and there also in building also what are the different rates that you have. So in that way you have to segregate all your blocks. Right. So the second thing is these things I have explained. What are the conditions for claiming depreciation? It is important for examination. Assessee must be the owner of the asset. If I have to claim the depreciation, it has to be my asset. Okay, I cannot claim depreciation on my neighbor's asset. But there are certain exceptions. When the registration is pending, it's just a formality. Yes, you can claim it. Like I bought a building and I have started business over there. Almost the payment has been done. Risk and reward has been transferred to me. So only the legal registration is pending. So I can claim it. Or take another way, there is a land. On that land I am constructing a building. Land is not owned by me, but the building has been constructed by me. I have taken it on a 15 years lease. So that building is mine. Though it is not legally written on my name, but I have spent a lot of money, capital expenditure I have incurred. So that is my building. I can claim depreciation on that. Okay. So there are few exceptions, but in general, it has to be owned by the assessee. And if the asset has been held by more than two people, like joint owners or co-owners, you call it, right? So they can take the depreciation proportionately. And the assessee must use the asset for the purpose of carrying on the business or profession. Obviously, you are charging depreciation PGBP ka hai, so like the asset that you bought, you should be using it for your business only. It should not be for any other purpose. Asset must be used during the relevant previous year. So when I say used, it includes passive income also, like passive usage also, active use, passive use. So what do you mean by this active use? Here I am using all equipments, camera, lights, all this equipment I am using. So this is an active use. But I am purchasing one equipment like fire extinguisher. I will use it only when it is a need. So I'm not actually using it, but I will use it when there is a need. So that is my passive use. Okay. Or but not generator I'm using, because if there is any problem with my power, so that is also my passive use. Okay, so asset need not be an active use, it can be your passive use also. In emergency we keep it, right, for emergency purpose. Even that is on that also you can claim the depreciation. Asset must fall under the eligible class of asset. So I said what is your eligible class of asset, like tangible, intangible. Intangible may they have said these things, no, land, building, plant and machinery, furniture. So it has to be eligible class of assets. So assessee, if you are as a tenant also you can claim the depreciation, but if you are incurring any capital expenditure on, like to make an addition to the building or some floor, you are adding some more floor or some terrace, so on that, even though you are a tenant, you can claim. Just now I explained that logic. And if it is a hire purchase, capitalizing the value equivalent to cash price, even in hire purchase also you can claim it, because it's just like you are paying the bulk of the amount, so you can claim depreciation on that. In installments, whatever you are agreeing to pay, like I want to purchase one AC on installment or some computer on installment, still it's my own lease. Yes, the ownership will come late, but still it's my ownership. Okay, so I can claim on that. Legal ownership is just a formality, it's fine, still you can claim the depreciation. Even when partners it's a partnership firm, like there are 4 partners, each partner is bringing 5 lakh, the fourth partner doesn't have money, so it's bringing one asset, so on that also you can claim the depreciation, because that is been used by the firm. So roads laid by municipality, so it's like there's one municipality, like local government, they have laid the loans, they want to claim the depreciation on that. So first of all, you cannot claim that, reason being there's no asset there. Okay, so you cannot claim it. And Discarded machines, there is one case study, Yamaha Motors. What they have done is, like, I have some 20 chairs here. I'm using these 20 chairs from last 2 years. Every year I'm claiming depreciation on that, but in the current year that one chair is, is broken. I'm discarding it. I'm just, selling it out. I'm just, like, not even selling it, nobody's ready to sell, I'm just throwing it away. Okay, on that also I can claim depreciation.